something else right here. Hello, everybody. I know that you might be waiting for us, but I am a goofball. I just need your open, Barrington.
Oh.
And I'm not having it, so you might as well say welcome, and I will try to find it.
Okay. Well, welcome. Welcome to everyone who's here. We thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking.
4 people watching.
Thank you for taking time to come and join us. We're very excited because we have award-winning journalist and filmmaker, documentary filmmaker, Kerra Bolton. She's someone who I met 2 years ago.
Yes, an inclusive life.
Inclusive life, but it feels like I've known you much longer. So
Yeah.
I honestly believe that you're one of these people who I probably knew in another life or something like that.
Yes, that's how I feel about you guys. I think you were like my brother, or we were related. I know that for sure.
So welcome to Speak Freely. Thanks for being here. We are honored to have you, and we say thank you to everybody else who's on. Ask questions, drop comments, and let us know that you're enjoying what we're doing. Yes.
And I'm ready. We can actually have a show open.
Hello again. This is Barrington. Speak Freely with Barrington Salmon. Our special guest is Miss Kerra Bolton. And she is, I'm going to read a little from this, award-winning producer and director, CEO and founder of Woodbine Films, which specializes in first-person narrative nonfiction that examines the meaning of community, connection, and identity in the Black community. Her directorial debut, Return of the Black Madonna, is currently in production, and the documentary traces her epic quest to learn to swim, dive, and map sunken ships with Black marine archeologists. And one of the things that I think about too is that I have had I don't even know what type of fear, how I would characterize it. I almost drowned 3 times in the course from childhood to my 20s. And so I've always had this really, it's like, I ain't getting in much past my ankles, maybe my knees. So when you talked about your film, I was like, oh shit, that's something else, that connects us. So tell us about your film, please.
Sure. Well, the film has sort of it's becoming its own thing, meaning that the plot is overflowing and it's following its own thing. But generally, I was actually in the water learning how to swim. And let me backtrack just a little bit. I have always felt a connection with the ancestors, but I hadn't talked about it because at that time, not many people were talking about the ancestors in mainstream. I mean, you would hear it quietly if you had an auntie or if you had an uncle that, did some stuff with some plants, like they may talk about it, but nobody else was talking about it. So I kept it quiet to myself. And then, but I would get visions over time, and they really started coming. This should come after no surprise to anyone, after Trump's election. And I remember I was at a yoga retreat in Mexico, And we were sort of getting deep into that subconscious space that you are, where it's that bridge to imagination. It's where everything is possible. And I really started getting visions of the slave ships and visions of just the hull of the slave ship, blood in the water, sharks, and it was just coming to me, and it frightened me, and I started to cry, and I didn't know what was happening because I'm like, I didn't know anybody in those slave ships. Why am I having this reaction? So I let it go for a while, and then I was working on the Detroit Rising documentary, and we went to the Detroit African American Cultural Center, which is gorgeous, and they have this exhibit that traces the journey from a fictitious West African community to Detroit. And they had the Middle Passage section where they literally had like a replica of the slave ship. And they had these mannequins to represent how our ancestors were stacked up against each other. And they had an audio portion where you could hear the moans of the ancestors. And I got to that part and I fell on my knees and I just started crying because I just felt all of that. And I was, at the same time, I was just praying that no other of the museum visitors would come by and just see me and I couldn't get up for about 5 to 10 minutes. So I got myself together and just kept it moving. And then the vision that really came was when we were making Detroit Rising, we actually thought the film was going to be about me being an American expat in Mexico during the time of Trump. And I never really felt great about that movie, but people were really interested in it. And I was learning how to swim, and I kept going underwater. And then the slave ship just kept coming back and coming back. And after after that lesson, I turned to my then director and said, we're doing a different movie. We're doing I'm going to learn to swim, I'm going to dive, and I'm going to map those sunken slave ships. And he just looked at me incredulously and he said, how are you going to do this? I said, I don't know, but this is the purpose from now until the rest of my life. So this is what I'm doing. And from that point on, from November 2019 to the present, I have been working steadfastly on that purpose.
Okay.
So that's a long question, a long answer to your question, but I really wanted to get into how it became.
Well, thank you. I want to welcome everyone who's here. Stella from Inclusive Life. Kelly Luces. I'm sorry.
Why would
Kelly
you say
Luces.
Lucas?
I don't know.
My nephew.
Larry Shaw, long time brother, we ain't seen you. Nigel Thompson, thank you. Well, greetings from the U.S. back to Trinidad. As I said earlier, our special guest is Miss Kerra Bolton. She's a producer, director, former journalist, an all-around Renaissance woman, who's very humble. And if you don't say these things, she'll just not say anything and hope that she kind of gets up. Molly Gordon, how you doing?
Hi, Molly.
Hey, Molly, how you doing? So I listened to Laura's interview with you on Cradle Conversations, and you talked about experiencing race memory. Laura said she's not familiar with it. So I'm wondering if you can give me your description, your explanation of what it is. What it means.
Of race memory?
Race memory, yes.
For me, everyone experiences it differently, but for me, it's just a feeling that comes over me. Sometimes it's cold and sometimes it isn't, but it's very specific moments that I think one of my ancestors experienced. There are a couple that I have in particular. One is when one ancestor was captured, and what those moments were like for her and for her brother. She had an older brother. And then there was another one of a woman whose mother was being sold because the owner of the plantation was in love with her and wanted to punish her. So he sold her mother. And I don't know where these stories come from, but they just come and they sort of live inside me until I'm able to let them go, whether it's in some form of art. Today I was thinking about, even though it wasn't a race memory, I was thinking about how Emmett Till's mother decided not to have him buried in the South, but to bring him to Chicago so that people could see what they had done to him. And I was thinking about the people who transported Emmett Till's body from the South to Chicago and what their lives were like. I'm not saying I was related to them, but there's this, I just get these images sometimes. And before we started shooting in June, I had a very vivid dream in which I was given the name of 5 brothers who, some of them came over from Sierra Leone, and it was my task to find out what happened to them.
Oh, wow.
And so I get these messages all the time.
So I'm curious, for those that know me, some that don't, I'm a traditional African priest, ordained priest, fought for years not to embrace what had been the gift that my ancestors gave me. And I'm wondering, as you're having these visions and you're, as you said in an interview, being haunted by these visions and stuff, how comfortable were you when it started? Because I'd be freaking the hell out.
Yeah,
I was just like, quote unquote, just doing regular things, and then these things started happening.
Yeah, I was freaking out too, because it's strange. And because I was a kid when they started, I thought I just had an overactive imagination and like, oh, well, maybe because I read the book Roots when I was 11 years old. I didn't get through the whole thing because I think it's 1,100 pages, but I got to like page 200 and I was like, he still ain't in America. I just can't, 11-year-olds don't have that concentration. Yeah. But I thought I had an overactive imagination. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was on the spectrum. But then as I started to read more and from internet and research before the internet, I understood that these things it's real, that race memory is real.
I'm wondering if the things that you've experienced, the feelings and emotions that you've gone through, if they have been exacerbated or what's the word? Heightened since that idiot came in office and basically showed us all of who America is.
Yeah, if I could, and I'll speak from this side because I have to turn off my computer. But race memory is a thing. I mean, DNA, we now know, and psychologists now talk about the fact that trauma affects the way your DNA carries on to the next generation or the people that you're making. And however way that you come into this world, whether it be whether you experience that trauma from the womb, or the way that they like to say it, womb to tomb, it's actually, before that, it's actually in the eggs and the sperm and the whole 9 yards, the things that we take on as human beings. We are so much more complex than we give ourselves credit for. And your memories are valid, and the things that you see are very, very real. And I'm so glad that you are telling this story, because it is cathartic and healing to the rest of us who have heard of these things but never met a real person that was doing that. So thank you.
Thank you for validating and just confirming, what had been there. I have to be honest, I tried to run away from it for most of my life.
Of course.
Of course. Why wouldn't you?
That's what most of us do.
Who wants
Yeah,
to?
just like Barrington, you were saying with your gifts. Like I tried to be in, as my parents would put it, in white world, and I tried to assimilate into that world so that they wouldn't follow me there. And they waited. They waited, but they got me at the right moment. And so after Trump was elected, it was and we started knowing really who these people in our lives are and what they are capable of and what they are not capable of. That's when it got real for me. And then especially after George Floyd's murder, I was done. I was just absolutely done, because I was like, there is no other purpose than the one that I'm on. And every time something new happens in the news around race, I just try to stay focused, because that's my work and that's how I can provide healing. You know, I spent a lot of time in my 20s and 30s trying to find out what my purpose is. And it's very simple. It's like creating healing art and healing spaces for Black people. Super simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely get that. As I went to Howard for undergrad, and when I graduated, I worked for a white company for maybe a year, and they fired me because I was a salesperson, and they fired me because I didn't make my sales quota, and they told me I had to use or lose my vacation. And I wasn't there for 2 weeks, and all the other months that I had worked there, I had overproduced, so I should have had money in my bank. And luckily, a very good friend, a white ally, sent my quote. You know, all the months that I had met my quota, all the other 11 months that I had worked there. And after that job, and then the subsequent job that I took after that, I vowed that I would never work for a big white organization again, and that and that eventually, after I left BET, because I worked at BET for several years, that I would never do anything that I don't want to do. As a person that didn't feel right. I taught. I didn't make any money. I ended up on food stamps and almost lost my house, but I was teaching children and I liked what I was doing, so I was fine with it. And it led to something different, and I got to do, like you're saying, spent a lot of time saying, this is what I'm not going to do. And now it's time to do what I want to do, because it's a good thing to do. And part of that is telling our stories as we are as a people, because there's so much healing that's necessary in who we are. We've been traumatized, not for 100 years, not for however long the Holocaust was, and not just 1 million. 10 million people are in that ocean that you're going to go swimming through looking for. There's at least 1 million people in that ocean. A million souls.
I think there's more.
I think there's more too, but I'm just saying that at the very least, there's 1 million of us down there, and we might be related to some of them. And you most definitely have their stories in your soul. I've read a whole bunch of things that are like this. I don't know if you've ever read books by Jewel Parker Rhodes. And she's a historical fiction writer, and she wrote a book about Frederick Douglass. And his first wife used to have visions at the ocean in Baltimore, and have visions and hear the people from the ocean talking to her. So your concept is not something that is unfounded or untrue. So and it's documented type of things. Even though it's historical fiction, she's working with real events.
And welcome Sean.
Hi, John.
Sean, what's going on? And Malik Walker. Malik, thanks for joining.
Oh, Malik is here.
And T Walker. I don't know who T Walker is, but thanks for coming. Thank
Hi,
you
T
all.
Walker. I'm
And
going to run away.
okay. So when you decided that you were going to become a filmmaker, how easy or how difficult was it for you to transition? Sarah Love, hi.
Hi, Sarah. It was both easy and difficult. It was easy because of my previous experience and expertise as a storyteller, as a journalist, and as a television producer. I could sort of migrate those talents, but film is such a different world, and I'm just at the edge of it, and there's so much there. So it's the industry that makes it difficult, and so I'm starting to enter, and there's a lot of barriers to entry, despite all of the news you might see about, oh, well, you know, we really want to support new filmmakers, and we really want to support BIPOC filmmakers, and it's a lot. It is a lot.
How do you keep it all in perspective? How do you navigate it?
Well, there's a couple of things that help me. One is I stay rooted to purpose, and that comes through my faith, and that comes through my ancestors. So I spend usually the first 10 minutes of every morning just being with them in meditation and prayer. That's how I energize myself. And then I just go through the day. I have been remarkably grateful for the amount of support that I've gotten from so many people over the last couple of months has been tremendous for me. So that keeps me going, that knowing that when I walk into a room to talk about my film, there is, as you said, there's a cast of thousands behind me. It's everybody who has given me their money or their time to support my film. So, and then always knowing that it's not about me. I mean, it's interesting. Somebody once called my project a vanity project, and I realized he didn't know what he was talking about, because it's not about me. It's so much greater than me. I'm just the conduit. I'm just the vehicle for this story. And that also helps.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny because I was thinking about you today, and thinking about the love and the support that you've gotten from our Inclusive Life family and other folks that I know. And if you were different, and if you projected yourself and carried yourself different, you wouldn't have this. But it's because of your sincerity, because of your integrity, because of your honesty, and you can't hide that. People see it. And I'm speaking to you as a human being and as a priest. And, you know, I don't know how much, I'll just say that whatever it is that you've gotten and that you're going to get from this, you're worth it.
Oh, thank you.
And you're worthy. Because a lot of times we keep on thinking that we're not worthy. Why are they doing this? It's only me, and that type of thing. And I know you do not discount the power of the ancestors and the deities and the spirits, because they're the ones who drive in this.
Yes.
You know, so keep that in mind.
Well, thank you. You know, some of the folks who are watching may know in the community that in July, I had an emergency hysterectomy, and I had a complete hysterectomy. So I don't have any ovaries or anything there. And I experienced a period of grief. Actually, I'm still grieving, but not as much. And that's normal for anyone who has that procedure. And a friend of mine, Ina, helped me reframe it, because I don't have any siblings and I don't have any children. And my parents and grandparents are gone. I think I have like a first cousin and maybe a great aunt, but I'm basically the last of my line. And so my friend Ina said, what if yes, you're the last of your line, but what if your job is to burn the karma and of your family, and so that once you're gone, your family karma is gone and you can all be at peace.
Yeah.
And when she said that, that just filled my heart with such happiness.
Yeah. That is profound.
So that I could give that, because I feel very ashamed that I cannot have children naturally, and I can't be a woman in the ways that are biologically destined to.
Mhm, mhm. Well, I can't pretend that I understand how you
Mimi
feel.
knows.
But Mimi would know. But I mean, you have my prayers, you have my support,
Thank you.
and whatever you need.
Thank you.
If I got it, if we got it, you got it.
Thank you.
So you talked about at one point you were talking about the deep work,
Mm.
and I chuckled when I listened to the interview because you said half the time you're scared shitless.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, I can relate to that so much, because people say to me, oh my God, you seem so cool, and I'm like, shit, you just don't understand the tempest that's roiling inside. So I was wondering, how do you manage? How do you control the urge to run?
Well, I mean, like I'm ready to be back in the water again.
Okay.
And but I emotionally I'm not ready, but physically I'm ready to be in the water again.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of fear around that. I don't run away from it. I acknowledge it. So even with my swim instructor, she'll have me do something, or she'll say, okay, this is what I want you to do. And I'll say, I'm afraid. And she said, uh-huh. And this is what I want you to do. And so it's like, I gather whatever courage I have inside, even if it's this teeny tiny, and I do it.
Yeah.
And I just acknowledge the fear. I don't try to fight it. I don't want to say I welcome its presence, because I don't welcome it, but I acknowledge that it's there, because it's not going away.
Yeah. So have you learned to swim yet? Are you still in the process of getting used to the water and all of that?
So I can do several strokes.
Okay.
I've not been above, well, when I went snorkeling, that was the only time that I was above my head in water. But in terms of regular swimming, I've not been above my head. So that's really the next step for me. And that's really the scariest.
Okay. Good luck.
Thank you. I'm going to need it. I'm scared shitless, because
you'll be fine, because one of the things too, give it to your ancestors. Give it to the Creator. Because one of the things that they always tell us is that you don't have to walk around with this burden. Give it to them, and it's a process. Because I'm a whole lot different now than I used to be when I started priest training. I'm very different. And I mean, even in the past 2 months, it's been like a transformation. Because Tigger Ray kept on saying, I have this. We have this. So he's always like, what are you worrying about? Why are you so worried? Why are you stressed? Why aren't you sleeping when I'm here? So I just, and there's always a vision that I have of falling into somebody's arms and letting them catch you. That's what I visualize all the time. And I know he ain't going to drop me.
Yes.
I know my ancestors aren't going to drop me. I know Almighty God's not going to drop me. So I sleep like a baby these days.
I am going to think about that, because yes, I'm still stressed. I mean, I'll probably announce this on Facebook, but for the folks who are watching, but the Inclusive Life Family, I asked for $5,000. We raised $15,000. Yes, we raised $15,000, and that. So when you talk about the universe, the God, the Creator, the ancestors are like, we got you, because for the surgery I had to dip into the funds to pay for it. The alternatives weren't good, and I had people that I needed to pay for these next steps of the film so that I can get more funding, and y'all covered it. So I'm just so happy that we were able to raise that much money.
And Tigger Ray just said more's coming.
Yes.
Tigger Ray said more's coming.
Because we got work to do.
We got work to do. And he said that they're not going to let you go halfway and let you and just have the train go and stop. You're going to go all the way.
Yes.
And so it's just a belief process. Every day you do a little bit more and a little bit more. So it takes a while. It's not like tomorrow you're going to be like, oh yeah, I'm at this place. It takes a while because we're human, we worry, we think about stuff. But this fundraiser is a manifestation of the reality of your existence. And it's not a one-shot deal like this is the only time you get this. It's recurring.
Yes.
It's revolving.
And what makes me happy specifically about this fundraiser is that from, right after I got out of the hospital, my first worry was, how am I going to continue this film? How am I going to pay the people that I owe money to? Like, how is this all going to happen? And so from my sickbed, I was applying to all these different grants. I applied to Sundance, and I haven't gotten word of any grants yet that I'd gotten. But the money came from the community, and that meant so much to me, because it wasn't just the money, it was all of the personal notes that I received from people. And it just really was part of the healing process, because I realized I wasn't alone.
You're never alone.
Never alone. And so that just really, it just warms my heart so much, more than I can say.
Yeah, well, good. So you're a Detroit native?
No, I'm from Philly. I'm a Philly girl, and I was brought up in South Jersey, and I kept moving south and south and south because I guess I like the weather. I went to college in Maryland at Hood College in Frederick, Maryland, and then moved to North Carolina, and then moved to Mexico. So I think this is about as far south as I want to go at the moment.
So tell us about your Detroit project. Is it done, or are you still working on it?
It's done. So I was the producer of Detroit Rising, How the Motor City Becomes a Restorative City. So 3 years ago, a man named Ted Wachtel, he and his wife Susan are the pioneers of the restorative practices movement. They founded the first graduate school that is wholly devoted to the study, the research, and the promotion of restorative practices. It's called the International Institute for Restorative Practices, and it's in Pennsylvania. And he read a CNN article that I wrote called like How Black Women Saved Alabama and Democracy, because I don't know if you remember the election in 2017 where they were about to say.
I wrote about it for a number of newspapers.
Yes. So you remember that election, and Black women came through. So,
as you always do.
Yes, 98% of us, we came through. So I wrote a story about that for CNN. He'd read the story and contacted me and said, look, they're doing some great things in Detroit, and I will pay for you to go to Detroit and just report on what you find. And so the first, hey Brenda, so the first time I went, I had like this really moving experience that really did end up converting me to restorative practices. And I can tell you about that if you want me to, but some people know, because I've written about it, that when I was 17 years old, I was coerced into having sex with a white police officer. And I carried that secret for 25 years before I even told my parents, before I told anyone. And so I went to Detroit as part of this restorative practices reporting, and the first place I had to go to was a police community summit. Yes. And, you know, I don't like to be around police. Like, I freeze up. I just freeze up.
Yeah.
And so I found myself getting angry during the day, during this day with the police officers, because they were wanting us to see them as human. And I'm like, but you killing us and you hurt me. And so finally, I just told my story. And the commander, Commander Eric Ewing, who was a Black man, he said, I don't know who did this to you. And I'm sorry that it was done. And I'm especially sorry that somebody who is in a uniform that I wear did this to you. We're supposed to protect you, not to harm you. And, you know, he apologized, even though he had nothing to do with it, completely different city, state. Yeah. And I started to cry because I felt heard and seen. Yeah. And I thought that if restorative practices had the power to break down that wall for me, then it was really powerful. And so we went back to film, and we went into schools, and we didn't go into prisons, but like there's like lots of different stories about how, and it's all Black led. So there's no white person somewhere pulling the strings. It's all Black led. We're having a revolution by conversation in our communities. Okay. And that's where all the magic and the heat is.
So how come we ain't hearing about it?
That's a good question. Folks ain't watching.
Outside of what you've done, because now I want to, you know, because I have this battle within me that just violence isn't going to be enough.
Yeah.
And when I see and hear people doing certain things, white people generally, I want to punch them in their neck. That's not going to solve the problem. It's not going to advance where we need to be. So, and then, you know, being like an inclusive life and talking to all of our white brothers and sisters, you realize that just talking and breaking down barriers and being honest and not being afraid, because I think the biggest thing is fear. Because most of the time I talk to white people, they're like, well, shit, I would love to talk to a Black person, but I'm afraid what they're going to do. I'm afraid what they're going to say. And it's like, fuck it. No. I mean, this young lady, when Mimi used to be on the radio, WPFW, I was waiting for her to finish her show. This white woman came in and we started talking. She started crying. And she said she has been anguished about trying to reach out and connect with Black people, and she's afraid about what they're going to do.
I think I have a delivery. Hold on 1 second. I don't know if this ever happens during the show, but I'm sorry, I gotta get the door.
That's fun.
Out 10.
I was right. I got a delivery.
Okay.
I'm so sorry, guys. But go ahead. You were saying.
No, it's fine. I forgot what I was going to say, so it doesn't matter.
Okay,
but you were talking about the white woman who was afraid.
Oh, yeah, we were talking, and I said to her, what's the worst they can do? I said, they'll probably tell you to go to hell, or they're going to allow you to try to make that connection. So I said, and I said, just don't stop. Because if you stop the first time that you get rebuffed, then you may not ever get your blessings.
Then you're living in your
privilege.
You know?
Yeah. So, but then on the other end, because I'm sure this has happened to you, that then they want to start telling you all the things that they feel guilty about. And it ends up, if I feel like if I don't have emotional boundaries, then they try to do a dump of like all of the guilt that they've been holding inside. And so for me, I have to protect myself. I allow a little bit of connection where in places that I feel safe, but then after that, I can't, because it's not healthy for me.
Well, I'm a priest.
Yes.
And I keep on telling Mimi, it's like, well, shit, I'll go on the bus, I'll go on the train, I'll be walking in the street and people just come and just start telling me their stories,
Mm.
telling me things that are going on and things in their life. So I'm just like, okay, so I just deal with it and compartmentalize it,
Mm-hmm.
put it away.
Yeah.
And if there are things that I can do spiritually, like pray or pour libation, I'll do it. But it's different. It's just, well, it's different because I'm a priest, I guess.
Yes.
And father confessor and people confessing their sins and shit. So it's like, okay. So, but yeah, but you do have to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing for me too is that people say I'm hard.
You?
Yeah, because if I'm talking to people and they only want to dump and not take responsibility, I'm gonna dump their ass.
Yes.
And make it clear that you have some responsibility here, because we live in a I mean, it's been telling for me to be watching all these idiots in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
all these other places with this mask thing and this thing and critical race theory.
Mm.
And all these people in these school boards saying that America's not racist, and you can't be telling our children those things. And I was like, all you motherfuckers need to get a grip and stop lying.
Yes.
They lie, they know they're lying, and they want to perpetuate the lie.
Yes.
And I just don't have no patience for that no more.
And how can a country stand on a bunch of lies? It can't.
Yeah, but
It cannot. It's not sustainable.
we're seeing the effects of it now, aren't we?
Yes. That's right.
Kenrick is my boy. I met Kenrick. He was a student in high school in the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. I was an education reporter among a bunch of other things, and I met him when he was in high school.
Oh, wow.
I went to a party. This had to have been maybe late 90s, early 2000s. And he walked in and I was like, I know this dude. We started talking and reconnected.
Oh, awesome.
Lovely brother, hardworking, smart as shit.
Mm-hmm.
Just a great heart. So thank you for coming. Critical race theory is simply a phrase that means that, yeah, true. But the irony, Nigel? All of these Republican legislatures are passing anti-critical race theory, saying that nobody's supposed to teach it, but they weren't teaching this shit in the first place.
Yes.
In college. They don't teach it in high school.
No.
Right? So I guess it's just a hook that they're using to get to hammer Black people, and the whole idea of us telling the truth. So
there's more than one way to lynch a person, that's for sure.
Oh God, yes. Yeah. I mean, I keep on every now and then, because I'm one of these Jamaicans with 15 jobs. I sat down recently and counted up all the jobs I've had since I came to the US.
Mm-hmm.
Like 56 jobs.
Wow.
And there's so many of them that folks were just like, oh, we don't want this dude here.
Mm.
And so they manufacture some reason,
and
I'm out. Like I told Mimi, I got a job at the U.S. Postal Service, a good government job, right?
There you go.
In creative services, which is like a fancy name for public relations.
Mm-hmm.
And I got 90 days, and I'm working hard as hell to make it through the 90 days, trying to learn all this new stuff that I didn't understand. And the guy who was a headhunter calls me like 80 something days in, maybe like 83, 84 days in. And he's like, where are you? And I'm like, I just came out to lunch. Well, get back as soon as you can. I'm like, what's going on? He said, and come to find out, he says, the woman who's my boss said that I wasn't a good fit. And he said he spent an hour trying to get her to tell him specifically why I wasn't a good fit, and she never did.
Mm-hmm.
I lost my job
Mm.
and went home to my then wife, and she was like, "But what did you do?" And I was like, "I didn't do nothing." And she's like, "I don't believe you. You had to have done something."
Mm-hmm.
So about 2 years later, I'm going somewhere. I see a black dude that worked in the office with me, and he's like, oh my God, I'm so glad that I saw you. The reason why she fired you is because she didn't like your accent."
What? Wow.
That's what I said.
That type of stuff happens every day. It doesn't have to be no good reason. It's just some concocted thing.
Yes. Or they didn't like me for being an intelligent Black woman and not hiding it.
You're scary.
Yes, it's very frightening. And so I got that when I was in journalism and in politics. And, and I'm like, you were at the interview. You knew who I was when I walked in the door. So why should I show up and be something different now that you signing my paycheck? Yeah. What you see is what you get. Yeah. And if you didn't like it, you shouldn't have hired me.
Yeah. It's really interesting too, because you have moved way down the road of being your own boss.
Yes.
Not answering to anybody, not having to get permission to do shit. You just go do the stuff you need to do. Yes. Which is the way it needs to be, because I always laugh, because I've never had stupid women. I've never been involved with stupid women.
Yes, you have.
No, well, okay. They may act stupid, but they're intelligent. Right? And I a lot of times they say, the guys I talk to are afraid of me. The people at work are afraid of of your intelligence. So, but you can't change who you are.
No. So, and why would we?
Why not?
Because
sometimes you got to be subversive,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've done that sometimes. I go in there sometimes. I don't say nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that the minute that I say anything, that's the moment that I'm going to be slowly moving towards the door.
They're going to have your bags packed. Yes.
My bags are always packed.
Sean says you're going to get in trouble.
Sean.
He's already in trouble.
Sean,
I'm already in trouble.
Sean, he's never in trouble, at least not with me.
Sean be starting stuff on the internet.
That makes life fun. So we talked earlier, and I wanted to see if you could share some of your thoughts.
The Middle Passage, yes, by Tom Feelings. So The Middle Passage, for folks who, we were talking about it earlier. Hold on one second. Here's my copy of The Middle Passage. This book really inspired my film. I'm hoping that we'll be able to use some of the illustrations because it puts a visual language on what I had been seeing. I don't know if you can see this, but I mean, and there's, the big picture in the middle. Let me see if I can find that. But it put a visual language to the things that I had seen. And then some of the research in the beginning of the book is really important. People often skip to the illustrations, but for example, one of the researchers that I want to interview, she was saying how the word ship means like we think friendship, how that's a meaning of kinship in some of the languages in South America and the Caribbean, and that came from the shared experience of being on that ship. And so that's why I think the ship is so important, because I started with the question of before white people decided to define who we were. Who were we? And and I knew that there was a story in Africa for us. And of course, we're unraveling our story here, well, in the United States and in the quote unquote new world. But there is that middle passage, and there are stories from it, but like, I feel like I don't know enough about it. And there was a transformation that happened on that ship that is in my DNA and in the DNA of so many other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like going back to that ship is where the answers are. And that's why this book, I mean, if you can see that, I mean, it's just so important. I'm trying to find the big picture in the middle of the book, but this picture, I mean, this book really is incredible. And unfortunately, it took, Mr. Feelings passed away some time ago. It took
2003.
Yeah, it took him 10 years.
Really?
To do this book. I mean, can you imagine if you look at some of the images in it, can you imagine trying to draw some of this? I mean, I'm trying to see something that would, but oops, that's not really showing. But anyway, if you could see some of these images.
This is the one that always haunts me.
Yes, that was the one I was looking for.
Really?
That's it. And so when you see that, you can't help but, I mean, there's one that I'm looking at right now where the rat is eating at the dead man's. I mean, these things actually happened.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I'm interested in going through Black people's trauma. I'm interested in finding answers and truth. Because I feel like if we can know this truth, whatever that is, then we can set ourselves free. Then we can continue to name ourselves. And that's another important part of this project, this film project. And I'm also working on a memoir about it, is the names. So, you know, I use the words, the ancestors, in a very sort of free manner, but I am getting to know their names. So when I really need help, I sort of do an invocation. My name is Kerra. I am the daughter of Sandra, who is the daughter of Doris, who is the daughter of Queen Esther Horn, who is the daughter of Vincent. And when you call those names, when you call them by name into your spirit, I feel like nothing can touch you. And so the naming is as important as everything else. We must name ourselves.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've been thinking about my name, my European name. And it's weird because you get so attached to it.
Yes.
But it's not really yours.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really who you are in the truest, most elemental, ancestral self. And, you know, I've been having this internal debate about changing my name.
Do you have a name in mind, or?
Well, I gotta, when you go into the priesthood in Akan, you go to the shrine and the deity gives you a name. So I was born on a Thursday, and Thursday born males are Yao. And I got the name Dankwa. Dankwa was one of the colleagues, one of the founders of, he was a colleague of Kwame Nkrumah and one of the founders of modern day Ghana. And they said he was very intelligent and
wasn't he
very educated. No, that was not a Aquila Arabia. So the characteristics that I'm supposed to carry are born in the name. So yeah, so I've just been thinking about it. that's a way for us to reclaim ourselves, our true selves.
Yes.
So at some point, I think Barrington Salmon will kind of fade away.
Yeah, it'll give way to something else. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I actually wanted a different name. I did not like Kerra at all. I wanted to be called Carmen because I had seen the opera Bizet's Carmen and fell in love with the character and thought I should be Carmen. So I went to school the next day and told all my little friends that my name was Carmen. And they would call my house, my parents' house, and ask for Carmen. And they would say, well, Carmen doesn't live here. And after 3 or 4 times this happened, my mother called me. She said, did you change your name and didn't tell us? And I said, well, yes, I want to be Carmen. And she's like, hell no. And so she explained to me that she was really thoughtful about my name. There was a character from one of the soap operas, Tara, that she really liked. Tara was on All My Children. And so she, jiggled with the names, the letters of my name and came up with Kerra, which means dark one or dark beauty in Gaelic, an ancient Irish language.
Yeah.
So from then on, I just decided to be proud of Kerra, not because of the name of the Irish translation, but because my mother crafted it in her own imagination. And so that's why I'm going to stay Kerra. But when you were talking about changing your name, I started getting intrigued by that idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's something we need to do because there's power. There's power in your name.
Mm-hmm.
There's power in connecting to your ancestry. Because I mean, all of us are here. And I mean, I'm just fortunate that my father's family wrote down the names of our ancestors they were connected to. Most of us don't have that.
Yes.
Most people I talk to can tell you who their grandmother, grandfather was, maybe great-grand, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I see your connection. I see your work as connecting us who's broken over here back to the continent.
Yes. And the water is the way.
Yeah.
The water is the way. But I mean, in the naming, I had help from a wonderful white woman. Her name is Stargazer Lee, and she has been helping me with ancestor tracking. And she's been an integral part of the film. I haven't talked a lot about her because she kind of likes to stay behind the scenes, but she's been amazing in helping me name and getting the paperwork and going on through ancestry.com with me to figure out who my ancestors were. And there's one of my ancestors likes to come visit her. We call her the squat woman. And I have felt her presence too. The squat woman comes to me when I'm meditating. And so one time I asked her, I'm like, well, why are you coming to me while I'm meditating? I don't see you any other time of the day. And the response I got back was, I've never had a chance to sit down in my life. And so this is the only time I can sit down. And so she comes to me and I can feel her on my hand. My left hand is where I feel her. So it's, it is definitely real.
Yeah, wow.
They are with us and they have messages for us and they have, and medicine, and they have all kinds of gifts for us.
And that is what I learned. It took me 4 years to accept that they said to me, the priest said to me that I come from a long line of priests on both sides of my family, and that they got together and decided who of the ones who's coming will become the priest. And I got chosen.
That's amazing. Wow.
And 4 years.
Wow.
No,
so have you documented your story about the 4 years of becoming a priest?
That's it. Because
He will.
Thank you, Mimi.
I went to an Akan priest who was a marriage counselor. And I was married to my son's mother, and we were imploding.
Mhm.
We went to try to save the marriage, I guess. And we got into a fight in the shrine, like a verbal thing, almost came to blows in the shrine.
Mm.
And I was like, ooh, this ain't good. And at some point, the priest said, the priest channeled her deity, Nana Surgery, and he said, you need to go into priest training. And I was like, yeah. I was like, that ain't happening. Because there's no
Wow.
part of me that I see as being a priest.
Mhm.
And I said, everything that I know about priests, I fight against. Because I was born and raised Catholic.
Mm.
You know, and just the whole, I told him, I said, and one of the first things I said to him, I said, if you're talking about priest, like being celibate, like Catholic priest, I ain't doing it. I'm not doing it. He's like, no, you know, you'll be like a ordinary person, regular person, da 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 da. And I said, but I cuss all the time. I said, and he was like, so? He said, I'm looking at this. I'm not looking at what you say. And then somebody came to me and said, you need to understand that when they choose you to become a priest, there's a lot of different reasons why. It might be to save your life. It might be to save somebody in your family's life. It might be to heal your family, to heal the community. And I was like, whoa. So when they explained that, I was like, maybe. But it still took 4 years.
That's the journey. Like, I want to do that. I want to listen to that story. I don't know why y'all talking to me. We need to uncover this story right here.
You can interview me.
Okay, that'd be great.
We
On
can
the next episode of Speaking Freely.
speak freely with Kerra Bolton. Shit.
Could you speak with Bolton
Yeah.
and turn the story
And turn it around because
it really does need to happen.
I
Mhm.
Anjanou Ellis.
Mhm.
She'd done a small film in like 2014 and she came to DC and I was interviewing her and she was like, you know what? No, let me interview you.
Mhm.
She interviewed me, which was funny because that had never happened before.
Mhm.
Asked real interesting questions. And I'm like, oh, you. And then we started talking politics, Obama, and she just like me. She a race woman.
Yes.
She's progressive and that type of thing. So it was different.
You have a hell of a story to tell, and we need to hear it.
Okay.
So maybe my second documentary is your story. Mimi and I will work together. That's right. And
I have several films planned about his life because I know I've been over the past 4 years.
4 years.
I've been collecting his stories, and the ones I find the most interesting, I'm like, that's a film.
yes,
That's excuse me, my Mac just did something crazy, so I'm coming over there.
Yes, come talk to us.
Well, yeah.
Well, if you need an extra set of hands, let me know because I would be thrilled to just work on Barrington's story. I mean, you have so much, so rich.
Oh, Molly, we see Molly's co-signing. She's like, yes.
Yeah, Nigel, our other director, cinematographer, producer who's in Trinidad, he's come and we've made like 2 short films together, and we started a writing group because we all have stories and there's stories that need to be put out there.
And Barrington is the most interesting man in the world.
Not necessarily, but there are stories that haven't been told yet. There are stories in the Caribbean. There are stories that have to do with the way that he and I grew up, or that he grew up, that tell a very different tale than the shoot 'em up bang bang of Shatas and the I don't know,
To say it right, man. Shatters.
shatas, or the I don't know, the kind of hokey pokey whitewashed of Cool Runnings. All of your Caribbean stories have some white savior in them.
Yes.
And it doesn't give us as a people where we are, where we've taken over, where we run governments and have our own businesses and live on independent land as leaders. These stories haven't come to light. Not at all like in the Nigeria. You get a lot of we call them now Nollywood films from Africa that come from Nollywood. Or Ghanaian films. You know, I've seen beautiful stories that are authentic, real stories with African mysticism and all of that type of thing. I haven't seen that coming from the Caribbean, for the exception of some of the few. We interviewed a filmmaker a couple weeks back. I just got off the phone with her, where she did a film about colorism in Puerto Rico, but colorism within a family, where the presenting mother literally despises the color of her daughter's skin, and how her daughter deals with that when her father, who idolized the daughter, gets sick and passes away, and she comes back. The film's called Angelica. Beautiful story, and spotlighting a subject that doesn't get talked about, because in Latino countries, even in Mexico and places like Venezuela and Colombia and all of these different places, nobody wants to talk about the race issue. Nobody, the civil rights movement has not gone south of the border. When I lived in Mexico, I lived in Puebla for 8 weeks. And all the time I was there, I was told on several occasions, why, ¿por qué tienes que decir que eres negra? Why do you have to say that you're black? Why do you keep saying that? You're not black. You are Venezuelan. In Venezuela, there is no color. And I'm like, what you talking about, Willis? Because if I was 20 shades darker, like my husband or my son, I would have a problem. You wouldn't even be talking to me. So no, we ain't going there. And I'm claiming my blackity black self. And I don't have any problems with it. It seems to me that you're the one insisted upon telling me that there's something wrong with being black. And for me, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being black. I don't want to be related to my oppressor. I don't. I am, but I don't necessarily want to be related to the people who oppressed my ancestors. Why do we have that? And I mean, I deal with this in my family all the time, because there are people in my family that are lighter than me and that have different parents than I do, and parents that are white, and their whole thing is based on the parent that they never knew. That's, to me, it's a sin to not want to know your side of the family that you were actually raised and cared for with. So I don't, I think that our stories are fascinating. I love where you're going with your story. I love all of Barrington's stories. I mean, he's like high school famous in Jamaica, because he was on a quiz team, like, those high school quiz shows. He was on a quiz team, and they won like the national championship.
Wow.
And they won a trip to Trinidad for a month. And
Nigel.
Their coach wrote a book about it, and he's all over the book. So now he's like Jamaica famous.
See, these are the stories we need to know. I
know. You should see the book. The book is called The Spirit of Clovelly Park.
Oh, wow.
the last couple of chapters, Barrington's all over, and
Of
Barrington
course.
as a teenager. Yeah, you had your points, but I was like, this is a short narrative that can be done in Jamaica that tells about a certain time in Jamaica. The protagonist or the lead character is a female teacher in an all-boys school. Don't you want to know more about that?
Yes. I mean, that's a great story. That is a fantastic story. I want to know everything. I want to meet the little boys. I want to know what their lives are like when they go home. And I mean, these are the kinds of stories that need to be told. And my biggest frustration with the American film industry, as I'm getting to know it, is that there seems to be a narrow little hole of what can be told. And even though it's changing because the gatekeepers, there are efforts to change the gatekeepers, but it's like, it's like, well, can we sell your story to Netflix? And it's like, well, maybe you can and maybe you can't. I mean, I don't know, but I'm not trying to do this film so that I can be on Netflix. But I think anybody would be able to relate to healing and water. But there's so many stories like you were speaking about, Mimi, that it needs to go to the widest audience possible because we need to see ourselves reflected in our art, and we need to see ourselves on the big screen. We need to see the myths that live inside of all of us and know that those myths are us. And, I feel so passionately about that.
And, it's interesting because Mimi and I were talking this morning when I was on the way to work. And she was like, you need to write these stories. I was born in London. One of the most searing memories that I have is of the geography teacher telling us that Black people never created anything of consequence, that everything in the world that is of any use was created by white people. And when my mother told my father, because they had been in England for like 20 years, and when my mother told my father, you can stay if you want, but I'm taking my children, I'm going home. I didn't want to go because the dude said everybody in tropical countries swinging trees and wear grass skirts. And I was like, why you want to leave civilization and take us to this place? And it ends up that Jamaica was the cradle of my development as a Black person. Cultural grounding, pride in being Black. Everywhere that I go in Jamaica, you see Black people, lawyers, doctors, judges, everything, fish vendors, the entire gamut, right? And I was fortunate because I met Bob Marley, and Bob Marley was like my hero. And for a while, as a teenager, I was moving towards becoming a Rastafarian, and my mother said, if you do that, I will kill you. So I changed because I started locks in my hair, that type of stuff, and she was like, you ain't doing that shit in my house.
She doesn't have to worry about your hair now.
Yeah, my hair is a distant memory. But just in terms of, because people keep on saying to me, why you love Jamaica so much? And I'm like, why do you love America so much? The same reasons why you love America is why I love Jamaica. And so yeah. So Jamaica's like your first woman or your first boyfriend. No matter where you go, no matter what you do, it's always kind of close to your heart.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, for me, America's my bad boyfriend. It's like, I want to break up with you because you mistreat me, you not treat me right, and I keep coming back to you. So it's a very complicated relationship.
Very complicated. So I guess if we saw your Facebook post, and it had relationship, you'd say it's complicated.
It's complicated. Yes. My relationship status with the United States is complicated. Yes.
Yeah. And it's funny because people, I mean, I was telling a friend of mine that if I got $1 for every time someone said, why don't you go back where you came from? I'd be retired and comfortable.
Yes.
Because I've been here for way too long, and I have folks who get in my face who are like, well, are you an American citizen? No. Well, why aren't you? And they get like this. And I'm like, that's my choice. I don't want to be. But
Yes.
how could you not? And it's like, well, damn, really? And they just get all irate, And I was like, America to me is like spirituality. God doesn't need defending.
Yes.
What I practice doesn't need defending. So I don't waste no time trying to convince nobody of coming to my way. They will see me and see what I'm dealing with and how I carry myself and how I carry my deity. And if they want, they can come ask some questions and I can tell them some things.
Yes. There you go.
Our son, he said to me the other day, "You're one of the coolest dudes I know. You're a priest and you don't act like a priest. You don't come and beat me over the head with it." And I'm like, that's not my job to beat you over the head.
It's mine.
And she is good at her job.
Just joking.
So, and and the thing that's always interesting to me is that they're always watching you. You think they ain't watching, and they're watching. And so he's learning some things, and he's gradually easing in my direction, and it's cool.
And eventually he'll get there, and eventually he won't, or eventually he won't. But whatever it is, he knows who we are. And I came to that realization. My mother prayed every single day, and every place. My father worked for an airline when I was growing up, and we used to go on vacation to other countries, and we had the luxury because our flights were cheap. And every trip we ever took outside of the United States included a shrine where Mary appeared. Like an apparition shrine, like Lourdes and Fatima and Guadalupe and Medjugorje. And I know all of these places, and I know the ritual. Like I know the doing the rosary. I saw my mother doing the rosary on her knees, trying to append for her sins all the way to the shrine in Fatima. And my father was like an atheist. So I had both of these things in my life, where my mother was like constantly on her knees, and my father was an atheist, and he believed in ideas and creativity and all of those things. And so at this point in my life, I have my mother in my ear, and I have my mother in one ear and my father in the other, and they make complete and utter sense in the spiritual realm that I'm in now. I mean, I searched so many different ways, and all roads for me led to Africa.
Yes.
And I wanted to know how Santeria came to be, because, that was like the closest thing to Africa to me. But I didn't like the money grabbing kind of aspect of it and the evil side of it. But I didn't realize that was all Western created things until I started really studying different things. And I said, okay, these are my people. Oshun is my girl. I know this. That's me. And I know I'm really close to Oshun. That's my person. And I got told differently coming into a con, but going back to a priest who's actually a Trini Vinny like me,
Nana Kathy.
Nana Kathy.
Yes, Nana Kathy.
Yeah, Nana Kathy told me, "Oh no, you all Oshun," and I realized that truth there. And ever since she said that to me, my head has been exploding with messages and different things, and just this very feminine. And I've always been a very, very much about my feminine side, but this very feminine voice of reason in my head that is nothing but a mother. I mean, I'm sure it's my mother. I'm sure it's my grandmother. I'm sure it's the women who jumped those ships, and the women who made it over.
That's right.
And so I know this in this deep, really kind of comforting way that is very different than who I was even a year ago.
Before you met me.
No, not just you. But even a year ago, I mean, even a year ago, I couldn't say that, yeah, I'm in tune with this thing that's inside of me. When I hear you talk about how this film is coming to life, it's really very much the same story that I have when I'm piecing together the story of my family, because I'm discovering all of these things that I used to think were fantastical, but are very, very true.
Yes. Yes.
My mother jumped out of a window of a burning house 2 months pregnant and survived it. And I thought that story was fantastical when I was a little girl. And I go back to Trinidad, and I go to the Trinidad archives, and on the front page it said 2 people died. One, the daughter, Josefa from Venezuela, jumped out the window, and my grandfather died in the fire. And then the next day and this was way before I was born, and the next day, the front page news was like, correction to yesterday's story, only one person died. Miss Luces is still in the hospital from her fall. So and I was like, wow, my mother really was a superhero. And when you're young, you're like, you look at your mom, you're like, she ain't no superhero, she be a superhero. It's the truth. And so why would I ever want to deny that truth? Why would I ever want to say I came from something else, or some other story that isn't true? I don't want to tell that story so that my generations, people from Trinidad, people from Venezuela, people from Africa can say, oh, I take pride in that woman. I take pride in Josefa. I take pride in Desideria, my grandmother, who is even more fantastical. And so, all of those stories, and when you're finding out these things, whether it be through your dreams or through your visions or through research can spark, reality hits you in the face when you see it on the front page.
I've always said that Black people are magical beings. We are magical beings. There is no other way to classify it. We're magical. And so once I got that in my head, I felt a lot better about myself.
But you were so correct, because what other group of people have been through the things that we've been through and we're still here?
Yes. And we're not just still here. We have joy. We have love. We have creativity. We have laughter.
We have film. We have acting. We have
music and dance and food.
We festival for Barrington's deity, and Tigray on another priest broke it down in a way on one of the days of the festival, broke it down and told us, he said when you're trying to do something bad to someone else and you're trying to use the work that we do, that's called witchcraft.
Mm.
We are is magic. And he said the exact same words. What we are is magic, and you have to honor that.
Yes.
And that was the message that the deity gave us, in a way of saying, we don't do witchcraft, we do magic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's holy, and that's spiritual, and it's sacred. And I was like, whoa, because the depth of that, and then to hear you repeat it right here, it's like, oh, you Tigray up in this room right now.
Yes. Yeah.
And he just wants us as a people to know that we are magic.
We are. We are magic and light. And
That has to be
yes, and every attempt that either they try to go against critical race theory or all the different little ways they found to it's because they're afraid of our magic. They can accept a Harry Potter version of magic. But when it's just sitting right up in your office and you trying to get rid of it because you don't like the way it speaks to you in an accent, it's our magic and it's our light. And we have been afraid to see our own magic and light. And so what I'm trying to do in the film and the book, just the way I live my life, is to try to see the magic and light in myself and reflect it in other people so that they can see their magic and light, because it's the only way we get rid of the darkness.
Yeah, it's true.
It's the only way. It's true. At least that's what I think.
Yeah,
it's true. This has been listening to the conversation, hearing you talk about your journey and your film. Please know that I am more than willing to jump in. I used to go deep sea fishing with my father when I was a little girl, and I would be on this big old boat with like 5 computer scientists, and they would be, fishing and talking shit, and I'd jump in the water. And I love the fact that I was brave enough to jump in this water, but salt water holds you in a way that, and you float better in salt water, in deep salt water. And it's kind of hard to drown if you know how to feel in that water. And so I like to think that magically some of us survived, and they probably survived that survival is going to come through in your film.
If you ever go to Israel, be sure to go to the Dead Sea.
Okay.
Because the Dead Sea has so much salt that you can't sink.
Wow.
So I'm not no swimmer, and my ass was swimming in the Dead Sea.
And that's the explanation of, and there's the magic of Jesus walking on water. He walked on the Dead Sea because it was all salt. It was a flat surface.
But here's the thing too. I honestly believe, when I got a free trip around the world when I was in college, and we went to the Vatican Museum. And we spent the day at the Vatican Museum, and they said we probably saw 1/10 of 1% of all of the things in the museum.
Wow.
And one of the things that I am absolutely convinced about, because if you read Jake Ante Diop, and if you read Malana Karenga, and you read all these folks that have done deep research into Kemetic spirituality, into Egypt, they say that Jesus left Jerusalem or Bethlehem when he was 12 years old, and disappeared until he was 33. And I've seen research that says that he went to Egypt, to the Egyptian mystery schools. And I'm convinced that because the original Bible had 166 books, they gave us 66. And if you read about Egyptian mystery schools and stuff, folks were levitating. They did astral projection.
Wow.
That type of stuff. So I'm convinced that Jesus didn't need to be on the Red Sea. He would have walked anywhere because he could levitate. And so I think that the closest held secret to our salvation is in those books. Because those folks who control that's why they control the world. And if we ever get access, and if we ever learn how to do those things, those magical spiritual things that we used to do 5,000, 10,000 years ago, we're going to change the world. So, and Tigger Bay keeps telling me to tell you that you're going to be a priest.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's already a priest.
She's already a priest.
All she needs is one of
the training.
Yeah. And the training's going to come in different ways. That's what he keep on saying.
Oh. Well, Sean has a question. And speaking of priests, because Sean is a priest too, but he says, speaking of magic, one of the things that has impressed me with Kerra is the completeness and detail of your vision for your storytelling. How did you develop and come to that? That's a great question because I don't even know the answer to it.
Ancestors, maybe?
The ancestors, I guess it's just come complete and whole. And like I knew that there was the swimming, the diving, and the slave ships. Like those 3 mile markers they came complete and whole. But then I realized that wasn't the story. That's just the plot. The story is who I become in the process of that. And that's why the title is The Black Madonna, because I start as Kerra. And I think that in that process, the Black Madonna, that vision of wholeness and healing that is part of Ocean, for me, it's Yamaya, that it is the Black Madonna. And it is that divine in us that we call feminine. It's in all of us.
Have you seen Enslaved?
No, I haven't.
You got to see it.
Okay, it's on Epics.
It speaks directly
with Samuel L. Jackson, is that right?
Directly to what you're doing.
Yeah, they it's interesting because it's completely different because there's only one woman who's a diver, and she'd always been a diver in the storyline. So for those of you that don't know, Enslaved is kind of a journey through enslavement. Done by Samuel L. Jackson and his wife, and he goes back to his
to Benin
to meet his the village where where his people come from. He also enlists 2 different journalists to go to the different slave castles in Ghana and examine and really take a look at that. And then he had this diving with purpose team.
Yes, those are the people that I will be working with.
Oh, wonderful!
Yes. Same people. They're amazing.
They really are amazing, and they only traced like 7 ships, but I imagine that they continued their journey. Those stories of those 7 different ships, like one of them that capsized off the coast of Costa Rica.
I think was it Panama?
Oh, maybe it was Panama. I don't think it was Panama. I think it was Costa Rica. But
Suriname.
Yeah, it was Suriname. You're right. So it was Suriname. These people, 660 enslaved people that the ship guys were
transporting to
were transporting
some
to
plantation.
wherever, to some plantation, and instead of letting them go, they kept them in the
Chained.
hull, chained in the hull of the ship,
And they don't, yeah.
and they drowned.
Mm.
And I'm just at 600 people.
I cannot even wrap my brain around that.
When I watch those things, I mean, yesterday when I was driving back to work after dropping Barrington off, maybe it was this morning. I was listening to them, the camera footage from Elijah McClain, and I could hear in his cries and his moans the same cries and moans that I felt from those people on the ship, and it doesn't stop. Why do you keep killing us? And why do you think we not gonna come back to get you?
Exactly.
That we are not more powerful dead in the spirit world than we are alive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can kill
But
me if you want
they
to,
don't
but
believe-
I'm gonna come haunt you.
But they don't believe it. They don't believe that.
No, they don't believe it. They don't believe in our magic.
No. And they believe that whatever it is that they do is more powerful than anything we have.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because I'm looking at Hurricane Ida
Yes.
and the type of destruction. I'm looking at all of them fires out west.
Yeah. Yes. Well, you guys,
Mhm.
there was an article recently in Forbes, but it's also a part of the book that I've been working on, where, as you know, the hurricane starts as a specific kind of weather events, a wind in East Africa that travels across the continent and then travels across the slave trade routes, the transatlantic routes.
So they came
And it's the same thing. And I believe that our ancestors are in that wind and they are in that water, and they have some vengeance. They have some scores to settle up in there.
They do. They do.
And
part of
it is not a score that we have any control of as people, and we know this. I mean, there's another movie by a filmmaker out of the U.S. Virgin Islands where a love story comes through a hurricane because the ancestors bring back these two descendants of enslaved people that were separated by a hurricane. And this new hurricane has the descendant of the woman and the descendant of the man meeting each other, and they're like, why am I so drawn to you? And it's all around this new hurricane that comes to be. And I didn't see the full movie, but I've always been fascinated with the thought of that. And now hearing you say that about the hurricanes, it makes complete and utter sense, because the buildup of each year and each hurricane season being worse than the last, and global warming and all of these different things that are coming up, for reasons why these things keep happening. It makes no sense to me that we're still trying to continue in what's comfortable, or what we think is right.
She talked about that with Laura.
It's just so
that people get so comfortable,
obvious,
and it's like their whole existence is for comfort.
Yes, that's what there's
comfort.
Yes. And I mean, I like comfort. Anybody who knows me knows I like to eat at very nice restaurants. I like to stay at nice hotels. I like to wear nice clothes. But I know that my purpose is not to be comfortable. It's the exact opposite, is to meet the fear and to confront things. And I think the reward that I get is to be comfortable, but that's not my purpose. And I don't confuse the purpose and the reward.
And to speak the unspoken.
Yeah.
Say the things that people are afraid to say. Yeah.
Yes, we must say them. We must say them.
I was telling Sean that I saw a post on Facebook, because last year there was all this dust, Sahara dust,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Caribbean, and this young black woman was talking to an elder, and he said, "Those are the ancestors coming to help us."
Oh. Oh my God.
Oh, so every time that hurricane season is coming and the dust comes, those are our reinforcements.
Yeah.
I will think about that because, as you guys know, I'm on the Caribbean, and we have gotten some of the hurricanes. The first one we got of this season was a couple weeks ago, and it was really scary. I mean, it was like right against my window, and I was afraid that it was going to burst my window open. So thinking that, okay, this is our reinforcements, it's a much better way of envisioning that because it can be frightening.
Yeah.
But we were luckily okay. And so, I pray for the people in New Orleans and in Louisiana for what they've been through, because it's been rough there.
It's rough, but I interviewed a guy today. He's a journalist.
Wow.
And he's from New Orleans. And he said that he just figured, he said he was so traumatized because this was the 16th anniversary of Katrina. It came the 16th anniversary. He said that he was just compelled to do something. And he got together with a bunch of folks to develop this mutual aid thing, like a project. And so they have been giving people money. They've been getting food supplies. They've been getting all types of things for people who the government isn't even up and ready. The city government, they're just basically on their own. So they've been doing all this stuff. And that's what we got to do. We can't sit and wait for these folks to do, because they don't even really care about us.
No, they don't.
They're trying to do the absolute minimum. So I think that a lot of what we saw in this year of COVID is having to go back to the things that are natural.
Yeah.
Focus on family, focus on connections, reconnect with all the people who we're with, and that type of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I really enjoyed this discussion with you and Mimi. It's brought me so much joy today. Thank you.
Thanks for having. I kept on telling Mimi, we got to get Kerra. We got to get Kerra. And so I'm just ecstatic that we finally got to connect. And you are invited anytime.
Thank you. Well, the next time I come on the show, I'm interviewing you because you have so many stories, and I hope that you and Mimi come to Mexico. You can hang out with me in my pareja. We'll have a lot of fun.
We'll come because we're overdue for a trip.
Yes.
So we'll put that in our list of things to do.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah. All right, my dear.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening, for staying, for your questions, for your thoughts, and your support. And we'll do this again soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.